Electricast.
It's summer. Time to enjoy long days, lazy nights, and zero cooking. Because Uber Eats has deals all summer long. So, when hunger strikes, don't sweat it. Delicious deals are just a tap away on Uber Eats. Enjoy all your favorite food delivered straight to you. Get Burger King, Subway, Popeyes, and hundreds more local favorites and savor every last bite. Now that sounds like a good summer. Order now on Uber Eats. Terms apply. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Once you flip your brain from, I got to sell 15 million units, where are all those people going to come from? To like, oh, I need to build an audience of 60,000 people, right? I think that's doable, because then I think if you can build a community around your passion or your art or your ideas, like you may put out a couple of stinkers, but I think that should be okay, because that gives people a flavor or a trajectory of where you're going. Hey, Kareen.
Hey.
Hi. Thanks for having me on Brain Arcade.
I know it's so weird being on this side of the camera.
Yeah. So for everybody that doesn't know, Kyrene Kim, she's the brains behind the operation of Brain Arcade.
Hardly.
Yeah, but like you don't get to see her on camera much, but here she is. She's going to flip the interview around and interview me today so that we can do a slightly different episode. Why don't you sort of lead us into that?
And that's because there's some big changes happening kind of in your life, but also just in like the path of Brain Arcade in general. So maybe do you want to tell the viewers about what's been going on?
So I'll just wrap this up under day job. Like my day job is changing, right? Nothing's happening with Brain Arcade. In fact, if anything, I'm going to do more Brain Arcade and more indie consulting. But my day job is changing by mutual agreement. I am leaving a full-time W-2 job. When I say W-2 in the United States, that's the like tax form for like a full-time employee. It's like, it's jargon. For those in the States, they'll know what I mean by like W-2 employee versus like.
Sure, yeah.
Right? But like the part that makes it mutual is I'm excited because now I can focus on some of the other stuff that I've been building that we can talk about here on Brain Arcade. Maybe not so much today, but we can at least tease that stuff. But I'm going to be hanging my shingle for full-time consulting. By the way, do you know hang your shingle? Do you know that
what
term?
What do you mean? Of course I do. Would you think I'm like super young? I don't know what like a real shingle looks like.
Yeah. Okay. All right, just checking. I don't think all of our audience will know, but when you hang your shingle,
that's fair.
You're like open for business. Right?
Yeah.
In the old days, it's like when you go through an RPG and you see the sign that has like
yes.
it's like a shingle with your name on it, and you say like I'm open for business.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know what a shingle is,
ask ChatGPT. We'll be fine.
Yeah, ask ChatGPT. We'll be fine.
Oh wait, before you go too far though, like what? Maybe tell people what you did and like what your background is a little bit.
Yeah. So the job that I'm leaving, like I said, is mutual. It's definitely spreadsheet driven to instigate, but it actually came at a good time and it's perfect for me to start to focus on other things. But the job that I'm leaving was studio design director at Heavy Iron, which meant that I was the boss of bosses in the design department. But it also meant that I did a lot of like client relations, tool and pipeline like policies as far as like what we used when we used it, working with the other director level guys and gals like production and engineering and art director. And so it's more of an organizational job. Not a whole lot of design is happening there in a direct way. It's more like I know how the job is being done so I can help others do the job. But that's actually a great segue to what I'm going to be doing in my new endeavors, which is try to take that same set of skills and move it over into an indie space. And so that I can bring that experience to, new and budding indies, possibly even experienced indies, as far as like just being that old man on the hill that can give you advice as far as like, what are you making? How are you making it? Talk to me about the design. Oh, you're using Godot? Maybe you should use Unity, or maybe you should use Construct, or, one of these various other engines. And so like, I'm going to bring a lot of, 30 plus years of game design knowledge into the indie space and try to support a new ecosystem.
Right. And this matters to you because you always tell me that you were very self-taught as well, and you kind of wish that you had mentors to help you along the way.
Yeah, so I had mentors, but
okay.
But I was lucky in that I had two really great mentors, and like, we're gonna have one. We'll have one for sure. We can get him on at some point. But there was Noah Falstein and Gregory Fulton. We'll talk about them later, but I had two really great mentors, and they both taught me something different, and they gave me a really strong head start. One of the things in hindsight that I realized is that I was extremely privileged and lucky to be in QA, or quality assurance, as a tester at Blizzard as my first job. Because even from the test environment, I was able to learn a lot of design through osmosis there. Like the way they operate, at least then, probably up until recent history, is very different than the rest of the industry. And so it was interesting for me on my journey to become a game designer. I started out with a conception that was very strong and very Blizzard driven. And then I had to start figuring out how to like adapt what I was seeing at other companies to get there. And then it taught me to start to question or figure things out for myself. Then I had two great mentors, right? Got my first shot at design at DreamWorks. DreamWorks Interactive. I like to specify because it was not DreamWorks SKG or animation. And so I got lucky, but at some point I had to just figure out how to fish on my own. And like the strongest thing I got from my mentors was, all right, you're on your own, kid. Figure it out now, right? And they sort of gave me permission to go. Whereas like, I feel like there's 2 points here. One, as an industry, and I'm not indicting anybody individually or any companies, but like just the way we're structured and the way the business works, we have failed like 2 or 3 generations of game designers in mentoring them in the oral traditions, right? Basically like, here's some wisdom that I learned. And so, like individually, people didn't fail them. I think institutional knowledge comes from the places that you work. But a lot of times with the turnover, some of the people that made the original thing that was good aren't there anymore. So 100%. They can't pass on that institutional knowledge and the way people move around. So it's basically catch as catch can for everybody in the industry. And so everybody has at some point had to learn how to teach themselves or proactively seek out mentors of their own, right? Which is fine. I'm not actually saying that we failed them and we should fix that. What I'm saying is like, we got what we got. This is how it worked. It's like the industry is changing. We're going to have a bunch of indies now, whether they came out of school or not school, it doesn't matter. They still need that early stage mentoring to put them on a path to their own success. And that's where I think I can bring my specific viewpoint.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the way, I'm from animation. So like the way that hiring often works is you want to get it cheap, but you need a lot of people. And so you hire a lot of juniors and then they're getting managed by a bunch of seniors. But then because of contract work and the way that works, like per project, then they all cycle out and all of that institutional knowledge, like you were saying, gets filtered out with them. And then you start from scratch again. And then you have no intermediates because you're not growing that talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the amount of times it's so crazy because a lot of the stuff that I talk about here on Brain Arcade or even like just when I'm mentoring people, I'm like, man, I had this revelation or this learning like late 90s, early 2000s. And in my, naive brain at the time, I was like, all right, I could put this to bed. We've figured this out, right? But like literally the next 10 to 20 years of my career from there has been, oh yeah, I've seen this here. So here's how you fix this, right? Or like, oh, you're going about it one way, try this way, right? And so at first was very frustrating because I was like, why are we stuck? Why are we as an institution, as an industry, not learning from this? And it's not that we weren't learning. but a lot of times the conditions weren't allowing us to build a stable knowledge base. Right. And some of the larger companies were attempting to do it. I think Ubisoft has a pretty good program. Blizzard always had a good like institutional knowledge base because they tend to have like longer term employees. Like some of a bunch of the guys that were in the test pit with me ended up becoming management or leadership at Blizzard. But like that doesn't happen in an industry where you're like, oh my God, we did a great thing as a small company. And then we got bought by a big company or a medium-sized company. And then like, you know, some people stayed for 6 months and then left. And then that medium-sized company got bought by a big company. And some of those people stayed, but most of them left. And it turns into this weird cycle of all of the knowledge keeps leaking out. Then by the time you get to like these larger institutions who they have programs like let's teach and give back and stuff. But generally the people that are busy doing stuff are worried about deadlines. There's no space to breathe and teach and do things. And it happens on the job or you get little pieces here and there. And it's just not conducive to building like a very knowledgeable workforce as far as, oh, wait, why does this work this way? Like why didn't there's like 15 other ways you can do this, and then you know that gets lost in the mix, and then you know then those people go, they start a new company, that institutional knowledge goes with them, and then you know that. But with what's going on right now, like Microsoft just literally just announced like 9,000 layoffs. I think the last time I talked about layoffs on the show, I said the number was something like 25,000, and that was me padding it. Because like we recorded like almost 2 years ago. Right. And so, but now like by trackable numbers since 2022, it's like around 40,000. But I've always said that if we see 40,000, they're not tracking, like they're not actually announcing some of these anymore. Right.
100%. Yeah.
And also when like a medium-sized company loses a contract, there's probably 1 to 3 small companies. Yeah. Or even individual or like tens of individual contractors that are all also losing projects. And so it's not really a layoff for them, but it's lost business. And so like in my head, I was like, I think it's probably like double. It's probably closer to 90,000 people who have lost their jobs. I don't think a lot of those jobs are coming back. I mentioned this in the episode with Liam. Like, I think all of that still stands true. But another data point that I learned is that like worldwide, the amount of people graduating from game-oriented programs is in the tens of thousands. It's like between 10 and 20,000 or something like that. Wow. And so for me, all of those people, some institutional knowledge leaked into the indie space because some of those people are going to be like, I have nothing to do but make games. This is my passion. I need to do it. And then there's a whole group of people that are like, I need mentors. What's going on? And so like I see the need here, and the problem is everybody's off by themselves doing their own thing, and they're looking for community. And if we can build a community to encourage at first information sharing, then we can start to talk about like, well, okay, now how do we do things that benefit the whole of this community? So that's where my brain is at, is basically how do I help the community of indie game devs, not how do I build a new indie business, right?
Right. And that's kind of like what started the whole Brain Arcade idea, was to start talking about games and sharing that knowledge so that it's not just all in your head or in the head of your friends that are joining our podcast.
Right. Besides that, I just like to talk. Well, you're right. And part of that came from like when I do, like I call it smoke jumping or firefighting. Like I would drop into like projects in trouble.
Oh, yes.
Right. And so
like
triaging. But when that happens, I would be like, okay, almost, I mean, 90% of the time, it was basically, all right, let's go review the basics first. Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? What's this? What's that? What's this? What's that? And I call it like being the Columbo on the team, where I just ask innocent questions. And then like, basically I can root out the problems. But from that, it became clear to me, I'm like, wow, we don't talk about some of these things in a way that allows people to gain that knowledge. And I was like, I'm just going to start talking about it. Let's do Brain Arcade, because the common pillar in all of that is like, we have one customer, the player. And so what are they thinking? What are they doing? How do we address that? And like, you know, people in the industry are always thinking about that. We just don't, it's just not, it doesn't sell clicks. Right. It doesn't drive clicks to talk about it in this way. And I'm like, I don't care. I want to be that stable place where people can go and get information and know that it's available.
Yeah, and you and I were talking about this a little when we started, where I was telling you, like, it was really hard for me to find information on, like, how do I actually make a game in a way that's going to be productive, and like, how do I find tips to get over some of these humps in our development with like actual tangible advice rather than just kind of like theory based. And it's always so interesting to me when we talk to your guests, because sometimes we'll do like a debrief with them and they're like, I don't know if I have anything like valuable to share. And it's like, of course you have something valuable to share. And even just talking about it and having people come in and talk about their experiences, they don't realize like how valuable that information is, and sharing that together and like talking about experiences.
Yeah, well, because a lot of the guests that I bring on have like don't do a lot of social or outreach, or don't think about like packaging things up for another audience. They basically they're like craftsmen with rules of thumb, right? And they're like, oh, here's the rule that you follow, and this is why it works, and this is da 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 da, because we've reinforced that that's boring. And so like it's very difficult even in a teaching standpoint, because to get some of the stuff that they're talking about, you have to have a foundation that gets you to the point to understand it. Right. So it can be very tough. So like, I think though, instead of, and part of what this is about is not driving a curriculum, but more about, it's okay if you come to the podcast and you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about. Right. But at least I know what the topic is. And maybe I'll come back and we'll get into it. Like like the Ken episode with Tashi. Like Tashi, like I actually don't expect, like, that's super interesting to like maybe 100 people worldwide, right? And it's like, I don't care that, you know, 1 million people listen to that episode. I kind of care that the 100 people that need to hear it. That's more. So I think in a nutshell, that what I just said is actually my retirement plan.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, so what I mean is like, it's less about like selling clicks or getting involved in the spreadsheet style funnel game, lapsing players, and like all of the technical stuff around like product, and more about how do I leave a brain legacy for people that is like, here's all the knowledge that you'll need, because apparently 3 decades of game work and we haven't solved these as an industry. So I might as well record these somewhere so that people can get a hold of them. But that also stands for all of the things that I want to do to eventually sustain my retirement, because I want to make art again. Right. And to make art, you need to take risks, and to take risks, you need to be doing things that pay the bills so that you can have the time to make crazy, weird shit like I want to make.
You talk about this all the time about breaking out of that like AAA space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you're trained in the space of like, there's more learning than just the rules of thumbs that we talk about with other experts. Is you also learn how to ship a game like on time and on budget. There's a skill set in that, in trying to like squeeze the most quality out of what you have available, but it is also super restrictive. Like almost every, and I'm going to say this as a generalization, almost every giant franchise, I would say that their best game is the second one.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
So first game comes out, it's kind of new, and it's interesting because it's new. And you're like, oh my God, this is totally a new thing. The second game is where the most institutional knowledge happens, because there's usually not a lot of turnover there. But once you get to like 3 and 4, more turnover has happened. There's less institutional knowledge, but there's also there's a paradox. We need to release the same game, but we need to provide something new. And what that can do is it can start to change the flavor of what you're making. Also, technology can change. So something that worked well on an Xbox 360 may not work well for the audience of an Xbox One, right? Like as the consoles change, or even like 5 years of PC growth, it doesn't matter. Like the market moves, everything moves. And so like to provide something new changes that flavor of the franchise. And so to me, there's like this peak point where the second version is always, it's all the stuff that we didn't get to do in the first one. So it's like it gets better, and then from there, it's not necessarily that it grows better. It's just now it becomes a function of business of like, for us to do a third one, we need to do it for like this much or that or the other thing. So an interesting one is like Grand Theft Auto used to be a 2D game. Grand Theft Auto 2, Grand Theft Auto 2 is amazing. Like it was like for that type of game, it was a top-down like driver. It's Grand Theft Auto, but it was a top-down like 2D game. Mm-hmm. And the transition to 3 was amazing because by introducing 3D and going to third person, they actually somehow kept the same flavor, but they got a new game out of it. So when I say Grand Theft Auto used to be 2D, you're surprised because from your POV, it's always been a 3D game.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. And that's all I remember it as.
Right. And to me, even it's almost like the second game like rule applies here too, because like the first one was like Grand Theft Auto 3, and then they did Vice City. And Vice City was amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
I remember Vice City.
Yeah. And then San Andreas was also very amazing.
Oh,
but
right.
they were technically in that same bubble of like, it's Grand Theft Auto 3 plus.
Right.
Then Grand Theft Auto 4 came out, and then like it's good. It's really awesome. But like it started to try to do different things. And then 5, it's almost like it evolved again at 5. So it's like there's this constant reinvention happening. And so like it's very difficult unless you have a 50 million foot view of things to be able to keep the flavor of the product going and decide which institutional knowledge is still appropriate to the changes, right? And so
you know what's so funny about that tangent is that like you're really demonstrating why your knowledge is so interesting because it's very varied. Like you have a lot of game design knowledge, but you also have a lot of business knowledge and institutional knowledge, and like you think about things on like a little bit of a bigger scale and how all the pieces fit together. I guess that's your job though, but like I think that's what it makes your job interesting.
So what's interesting, so thank you, but it's also growing up or coming up in games at the age that I was, and this is by the way driving a lot of my desire to come back to art and in my retirement and making art games, is like in the late 90s, early 2000s, almost everybody in the industry still had this dream that they could pitch their own game, and that it was possible to go into the business. Not only do I have the idea, I know how to execute it. So now I can pitch this thing that's going to be amazing, and it worked for some people. And you know, it's a competition, but that's no longer possible. Like I'm not saying that there's not art in like big games. There's plenty of it. In fact, there are very expressive art-focused projects and capital A art, not visuals. Like I mean, like you know, it touches the human soul. But that's not the norm. Like the business is not run that way. The business is run on numbers, right? Copies sold, etc. And that process can squeeze the art out or even dilute it in a way that is like for quote unquote a mass audience, right?
Right.
Because
which I think there's like a place for both. Absolutely.
Like I love superhero movies. And in fact, I love the stories and the way that they're humanized in an abstract way and all of that stuff. Now, is it, you know, La Strada? Is it like, you know what I mean? Like, is it something that we're going to hold up as an art film? I mean, probably not, but on its own merits, like superhero movies stand up. And it's the same thing with like big AAA titles. Like I don't tend to play a lot of AAA games anymore, only because I worked in it for so long. But I do love the form or the format, right? Like sometimes it's like you just want a night of like good fun entertainment, or even like, you know, highly polished, like super nice visuals. But like, most of the time I'm playing like roguelikes and stuff. Right. But there's also no place, just like in the movie industry right now, there's no middle. There's like, we say AA, we say III, like, you know, we come up with all this weird jargon, but there's no ecosystem around funding smaller games that are meant to be, you know, like an art statement, or even just my view on how to make this version of something. I mean, I think we're on the verge of some of that, but like right now, the current ecosystem just doesn't support it.
I want to highlight what you said there, because you're not saying that those games don't exist. You're saying that there's not an ecosystem yet to support them. And that's like a completely different thing that I think is really interesting.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, so people are making mid-sized games, and lots of it, and indies are getting pretty good at it. And there's also some companies that got traction before we got saturated that I think are still doing pretty well, but there's no ecosystem to support new mid-sized games. Like nobody is funding them, right? And what I mean by ecosystem is every part of the process. So like getting funding is nigh impossible for a mid-sized indie game. Getting publisher support to take care of the things that are not purely dev, like distribution and marketing and things like that. Like basically everybody's fend for themselves right now. Like there's no prescribed way to do all of the things that you need to do. None of the current distribution platforms are indie antagonistic, but they are also not indie supportive.
Yeah.
Yes, you can publish on Steam. You can publish on ID at Xbox. And ID at Xbox is actually probably one of the more supportive ecosystems, but it's just hard to get in. Like we're saturated. There's like, also Sony has a pretty good indie program, or they did. Like, how do you curate that? And so a little bit, it's that the business hasn't identified a way to make money in the middle that is attractive to those with checkbooks, right? So funding checkbooks. But also that brings me to another point, which is curation, right?
Yeah.
Like we're saturated, even as players and viewers. I turn on my TV and go, okay, which of the 12 streaming services do I want to try and find something in? And then I go to, let's say Shudder, and I'm like, okay, it's all horror movies. It's all specialized. Like, which one of these am I in the mood for now? I don't know. Like, there's no guarantee of a good experience, but how do I even curate for myself? And so to ask like an organization that needs to make money, here's an example. When I was researching the future, which sounds so cool, I was researching the future. In December 2024, early in the month, I went to Steam. I did a blank search, and I tagged everything with the indie tag. And I didn't restrict it by year. I just went, I want to see all the indie games. And it came back with 100,000 indie games.
100,000? Oh my God.
Yeah. Like there might be something from 2 years ago that I haven't discovered yet that might be amazing, but I'll never, like, how do I even find it?
Yeah.
And then you can do genre and all the other stuff, but basically it's not the equivalent of going to like a record store in the old days and flipping through everything, looking for gems, because the interface is just not that fun. There was something tactile about going to like, a video game store in the used bin, or like going to a record store and flipping through the albums, right? There's like something really like Easter egg hunty about it. But like if I put in like something like that into Steam, you kind of have to be more directed and more like on point on what you're looking for, and then you're still overburdened, right?
Yeah.
So, but from a publishing standpoint, like I thought, hey, maybe I'll start an indie publisher. I nixed that because I basically said I need to figure out how to do this where like I'm not curating myself, because I have no idea. I can't play 100,000 games, right? Well, so, and not only that, let's make the sample size smaller. I came back New Year's Day 2025 and did the same search, and it was 103,000, which in that scale seems not that big, but raw numbers wise, 3,000 games came out in a month. How do I even sift those and look for something that I might want to play? I don't know. But if I'm looking at pre-launch code and materials, I bet if I put out an open call right now, I would just get flooded with stuff. I have no idea how to, like, I'm not doing justice to the indie community by sifting through and rejecting 99% of everything I'm looking at. That's not changing the ecosystem. That's just me having like a good curation eye and like basically starting I'm taking part in the same old ecosystem.
Yeah. I think you did a good job about going through all of the big points that have been kind of driving you, which is like one, information sharing and the dissemination of like knowledge. Yeah. And then two would be discoverability and just being oversaturated with so many titles now and how to break through. And then I had a third, but now I forgot.
Knowledge share. Ecosystem, right.
Yeah, building community and like all of that kind of stuff.
So both of those things led me to ecosystem.
Because, right, okay.
Right, because I started going, well, if I'm going to systemically, actually, it's way more selfish than that. If I go indie, what is the tool that I need and what's the ecosystem that I need? Mm-hmm. Right. So like, that's why everything that I just said is setting up the problems to solve. And so the problems to solve were, so somehow I need to build an audience. Somehow I need to distribute my art. And then the third one is like, I need to make enough money on it so I can do it again. Right. But if we go with the idea that I can get my costs down and do almost everything myself or with volunteers or with help, then basically the equation changes. Like success in the indie space or even in the AAA space is basically based on numbers, right? Mm-hmm. How many units do you have to sell? And once you take on all of this infrastructure of like, now I have a publisher, and then we have marketing, and then we have this, and then I have to do that, and then I have somebody that does social media, and now I have somebody that basically I have to feed the team. I have to feed all the things around the team. I have to do payroll. Yeah. I have to do all of the stuff that is unglamorous, like HR, health insurance. And, basically it blows up into all of a sudden your costs put you to a place where to break even, you need to sell several 100,000 copies. Or in AAA, like Spider-Man, or like Miles Morales 2 came out, and on paper, it was a quote unquote failure on day one, because it didn't break even right away. Like it wasn't profitable fast enough. It still became profitable, but like, that's what I was trying to break. It's like, okay, how do I solve this? Like, why don't I start with what's my budget to live on? How do I sell enough games to fulfill that? Right. And let's say I like base 10 numbers because it makes the math easy. So let's say it's 10,000 a month is what I need to make to live on. Like, okay, well, if I can make a game every 6 months, then I just need to sell 60,000 units, right? Maybe another 50% for tax and stuff. But I'm like, that's doable. Like, that to me is absolutely, like, it's not daunting. Like, once you flip your brain from, I got to sell 15 million units, where are all those people going to come from? To like, I need to build an audience of 60,000 people that want to buy weird shit. Right? Like, I think that's doable, and it's absolutely something that's solvable. So once I realized that, I was like, the current ecosystem doesn't actually have anything for me. Like, I have to build it. I have to build a bunch of these pieces myself to find my audience first, right? Because like, I'm also operating on the old way we did things in games was build it and then market it. So build it and they will come. And so like, you would operate in secrecy for 2 years, just burning people. Like, your burn rate is everybody's salaries. And like, marketing's done studies and they've done tests and all this other stuff. And, we can estimate how many units are going to sell. And like, it's great that sometimes happens, right? And then it sometimes works, but it's a hit driven business. If you don't have a hit, you're probably not going to do that game again. But coming over to the indie side, we remove the idea that it needs to be hit driven and it's more about consistency. Then it's like, how do I build an ecosystem for, somebody in Provo, Utah that just wants to make games about the things that are relevant to their life and make a living off of it. Right. And like, some people figure that out on their own, but like the pain and the problem solving involved has been a like decade long journey for people. Right. Like Blueprints right now is super it's super popular.
Yeah.
But that's a solo person with some help. He spent 8 years making that game, right?
I know.
What is the burn rate for 8 years? Even if it's just one person, you still have to you have a break even point. And so that ecosystem for them, I would love to talk to them as far as like, how did this work out? Like, give me the postmortem, right? And give me the timeline over the years. Cause I'm sure 7.5 of those were like, I'm just chipping away.
Yeah.
And chipping away and chipping away. And you have that patience, but like, I don't think this next generation is necessarily needs to have that kind of patience to get their ideas out.
Yeah. You're going into like the big picture thinking again, where you're thinking about like ROI and all that kind of stuff, or like,
right.
Yeah, which is so interesting because I think a lot of, especially small teams or like single dev teams, when they embark on the endeavor of creating a game that's for them and by them, they're really just thinking, oh, I want to make this cool thing and I want to like birth it into existence. Like, right. They're not really thinking of the ROI or like that bigger picture ecosystem that you keep talking about. But I think that's part of what makes that viewpoint valuable from you, is that you have that bigger picture in mind already, and you can communicate that to them. And like, I think sometimes people get overwhelmed with like you said, like, oh, I need 60 million sales. It's like, no, you don't really, you don't really need that number. And you like, you don't have to compete with the AAAs to be able to be successful.
Right. If we can get to tens of thousands or even like 100,000 sales for a lot of games at the right price point, it's like winning the lotto, or it's like a whole year of salary, right? If you do it by yourself or like 2 people. Right. And so what I think the eventual goal is, like, I want to build the ecosystem in such a way that people don't need to know about all of the meta business stuff.
Oh,
they can just say, I have the passion for an idea and I built the idea, right? And like, because what's important there to make non-blockbuster sales is actually community building, right? Okay. And because then I think if you can build a community around your passion or your art or your ideas, like, you may put out a couple of stinkers, but I think that should be okay, because that's actually gives people a flavor or a trajectory of where you're going. But right now, if I put out a couple stinkers on Steam, nobody will ever see it. And I still have to go out and build like a community. And so, the idea being is, like, in my head, you can either, the 2 ways to compete, and this is also sword fighting too. So like, there's 2 ways to compete. Well, there's 2 ways to fight. You either fight by being stronger, faster, and have better reflexes than the other person, or you outthink them, right? And so sometimes slow is better, and sometimes like smarter is better. And so instead of racing to the discoverability solution, which I'm sure somebody's programming, like, I've already seen it. There's like 100+ AIs that I know that I've seen that are like, oh, find this thing faster, do this thing better, do this, like, tell the AI what you like and it'll match you up with blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's great. Somewhere in there, like, let somebody figure that out who really loves that stuff. That's not where I'm at. For me, I actually want a place that's like a home. It's like, this is the home for indies. You can come here and take your time and hang out, right? It's the antithesis of like big business. Actually, here's an interesting example. It's more Starbucks than McDonald's. So in the 70s and 80s, fast food, like, you remember, like, there was a transition in fast food in the 90s or so where they started to be a little bit more comfortable. It's because of Starbucks. Or like, basically, Starbucks identified the need, they didn't actually drive that trend.
I'm in Canada. We got Starbucks so late.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
I'm hearing you.
McDonald's was orange, yellow, and all the seats were plastic or hard metal, easy to clean, right? That was because you were supposed to eat your food and get out. It was built on speed. And so it's uncomfortable to sit there. There's not a lot of space. The colors are more active or aggressive, right? So yellow, orange, red, they're all in the active spectrum. So it was designed to make you feel like you didn't want to hang out. In those early days of Starbucks, there's a lot of earth tones. And a lot of like comfy-ish seating, right? You
got a real glass, and like,
you got a real glass. You had like, there's a CD playing, and what they were doing was creating a place for you to hang out, because they knew if you heard the CD, you might be like, oh, what is this? And then they purchased the CD, and so they were monetizing not on just the single transaction; they were monetizing the whole experience.
I didn't know they did the CD thing.
Yeah, they would used to put the CD up front. And be like, this is what's playing, right? And then you could buy the CD. And so there was like all of those things, like getting a little bit of food, hanging out, free Wi-Fi. Like, they were trying to create a place where people would hang and have some community, right? And, of course, there are people that come in, they order with the app, they grab their cup, they're out, right? But then there's the other side of the business where people are just kind of chilling and they sort of build these like good vibes. And so everybody's going to run the way of McDonald's right now because that's the way most businesses are built. But what I'm saying is like, hey, let's actually go back to community hangout and good vibes and like, don't like, yes, there will be some way to pay for itself or monetize or something like that. But how do we create that space? Because I just want to interact with people that have the same passion as me. And I want to have like, I want to use that to build the ecosystem as opposed to, I need to go to somebody with a lot of money to then build something that makes them a lot of money. Right. It almost immediately ruins the vibe. Like you need to have a spot where like I know it's a lot of vibe, but like where the community can feel safe, but also like get their problem solved.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
No, I was laughing because I love the way you put it. Like a big company's going to come take your money and that's not a cool vibe. Like it's not cool, man. So it's funny because we've been kind of dancing around this topic and now you're starting to allude to it. We've been not shifty is the wrong word, but we've been kind of like alluding to your future plans and like the problems that you want to solve in the future. So like maybe how do all these topics that you're talking about kind of feed into that?
So it all crystallized in a couple of different ways. So like I still need to pay for rent and food and stuff like that. So I'm going to do consulting. I've already got some contracts lined up. I'm going to do 2 of those. One of them, I actually want to have them come on and we'll do an episode about them. But cool. I will be more publicly announcing stuff on LinkedIn and like, different changes. More Brain Arcade. I'm going to try and focus more on doing more content here, trying to get to a slightly wider audience. Virality is not important, but getting to the people who I think can utilize the information or just want to, hang out in the car with me for an hour. But my friend at Apple, he works at Apple. He listens to me on his way to and from work. Like,
it's very cute.
Yeah. And but there are times it's like, it's actually perfect for my commute.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the perfect time. And then the other thing is I'm going to call it a platform. I don't know what form it's going to take, but it's a platform for me and in the idea and the hopes that it will be usable for other indies. I've been talking to a lot of people over the last few months, and I think in a very short amount of time, it's not that I'm not trying to grow it to be big. That's absolutely part of the point. But I have a bunch of potential partners built up or partnerships of like an indie community that I can try to serve. Also people that can provide tools to that indie community and make parts of their life easier and try to speed the process of making indie games. And then, footnote. When I say the speed of making games, I'm not talking about just deving faster. There is that. So one part of making games faster is already existing assets, code bases, like that type of thing, or like, the material execution. But the other part, the slowest part of a game is indecision.
Which is what you're helping us with right now.
Right. And so there's a second piece of this, which is like, how do I help you get through the places where you're having creative indecision? Because try and test it or doing iterations is fine, but it takes a long time. Right. And so if you could instead say like, hey, Chris, what's your opinion on this? Oh, let me check out what you got. Let me look at what you're building. Right. Let me look at the build. And then basically I can try to help with some of that speed of building. Right. So, yeah, I'm excited because I think it's a big undertaking. But, like I said, selfishly, I'm going to build it so that it serves me as an indie. But I also want to make sure that it's building a community space for a larger indie set of people that are coming out of school and like don't have mentors and don't have, access to. Maybe they don't even know that itch.io exists, or maybe they don't even know that they can go to like fab.com and get like assets or like, right. Or even, maybe they've got a neighbor down the road that does 3D modeling and rigging and they didn't even know it. Right. There's lots of ways we can start to do information sharing that will make the whole experience faster and easier and also not alone.
Yeah. I want to highlight what you said about indecision because as you know, because you've been helping us as a mentor. So me and a couple people are making a small indie horror game, and definitely cutting through that indecision and having somebody who is experienced to bounce those ideas off of and be like, no, this doesn't make sense, or like package it in a way that's going to be digestible for us to disseminate to the rest of the team. Like having ways to make those decisions has been so incredibly helpful. And you don't know what you don't know. And so we didn't realize how much we were missing that until we started having those conversations with you. So then when you start talking about building a community where that kind of information sharing is happening and where that's going to be like accessible, it's really exciting. And like on a bigger scale, it's really exciting.
Oh, that's good. That's super validating, because like for me, I mean, I've been noodling on the indie space for forever, but very excited about it for like the last 4 or 5 years. And it's like, I get individual validation from people, but I haven't heard it. Like, this is the first time that I've gotten it back from an actual indie team that I've helped.
Oh, interesting.
Right. Like I've helped individuals in a way, but to hear that it's helping your whole teamwork effort is exciting. So
definitely. Is there anything else you think we should hit?
No, I think that's it. I think I'm very, very excited to start building some energy around an indie space and to make it, like to start to figure out how to solve the problem of like, indies don't need to be hit driven, or the definition of a hit needs to be changed, right? Like we basically need to build a lifestyle business, but for the whole indie space, right? As opposed to like a hit driven, get big kind of a space. Like I've seen this, like indie studios that have just gone down in flames because they actually got bigger than where they had a powerful place, right? They get like 1 or 2 hits and then they like try to grow and get big, but they end up like kind of changing the sauce, right? It's almost like when that indie band goes commercial and like all of your original fans are like, ugh, I loved them until they, whatever, signed that deal. Or like, oh my God, I used to get those donuts from, blah, 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 until they franchised and now they taste like cardboard, right? Like it's the same thing. Like I'm trying to protect the space underneath those bigger deals to have lots of mom and pop spaces.
Right. What you just described was good old capitalism. The race to the bottom.
It was, but it was a little bit more like, how do I get Main Street to be valuable over how do we just make everything fucking Costco? Although I love Costco.
I love Costco
too. But for specific things, right?
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. All right. Well, we're close to an hour. Do you want to wrap?
Yeah, well, let's just wrap it up. I mean, I think that's a good end, unless you have any other thoughts or questions or.
No. I mean, we talk about this stuff all the time, so it's hard to pull information out of you because I'm like I'm listening to you and I'm like, yeah, this all tracks.
Right. But I think that's okay. And like, I think it's worthwhile for you and I to do an episode like this periodically where we just.
Oh, no.
No, because I think it's good to hear, like I spend a lot of time in the episodes extracting information from everybody else. I think it's good to flip it, or at least for you and I to talk shop about like, what are we doing and what's going on? Well, some of the people I've already talked to have already said like, yeah, I'll totally be on the, on an episode. So I think it's super exciting. Here, I will hint, like, so I'm going to grow a community, but like, for me, it's always easier when you have like one strong flag that you plant that you're going for, or some sort of strategy or way to like make things easy, because you can get overloaded with like details, right? What's this thing or what's that thing? Or you get like enticed by the siren of virality, right? Exactly. You're like, oh my God, we could go viral if we did, right? But we sort of stay on point and go for the target. Yeah. But to me, I mean, I talked about this a little bit with the podcast, but the community needs to grow on what I call the 10s. And each time it grows on a factor of 10, it presents different problems. And so like, yeah, I have a whole 10-year plan in my head. Like did I say I like base 10 numbers? Like it's so easy. But like, how do we get our first person in the community? How do we get our 10th person? How do we get our 100th person? How do we get our 1000th person? And each time we do that, it changes the conversation, which means it's even more important to stick to what the like aspirational goal of what the platform is supposed to do.
Yeah.
No selling out. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I apologize so much to our listeners because they're all like, "What the heck are these two talking about? Like, what platform? What are they doing?"
Yeah,
But
we'll announce.
it'll become clear in like
Yeah.
I don't know, a couple months or something, and we'll do
Yeah.
another one like this where we'll explain everything.
Yes, absolutely. But so summation is
Something's in the works.
yeah, well, but like no day job. It was in the way.
Right.
Big things are coming.
Right.
You know, but I'm also open for consulting.
Open to work.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
All right. Well, it was so nice chatting with you, Chris.
Yeah, like
Thanks for coming on Brain Arcade.
That's awesome. We talk all the time, but like to do this recorded was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyrie. Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeewithcross.com.
I'm Iris, host of Or Whatever Movies and the forthcoming Powers of Darkness podcast. For the better part of a decade, we've been unraveling a literary mystery that begins with a strange version of Dracula. Yes, that Dracula. It's a different story, imbued with a potentially insidious agenda. What we've already found so far reshapes what we thought we knew, but the investigation isn't over. Support our efforts to finish what we've started and bring the full story to light. Go now to Kickstarter.com and search up Powers of Darkness to learn more. Coming soon on Electricast, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Electricast.
Hey guys, it's your girl Yasia. I want to share some really exciting news with you. I just dropped my first ever single, Spell on You, off my upcoming debut EP, Devil's Room, on RM Records. It's simply devilicious. Check out Spell on You wherever you listen to music. Bye for now.
I never thought I'd fall in love like this. It's time to close the chapter, but I think I needed this.
Electricast.